JFK, RFK, MLK, and Trump. The current president says the files will soon be yours to see, plus your money and the president's new demand. That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years.
61 and 56 years, to be precise. And tonight, the files have been ordered open. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. For all the talks, think about this for a second, for all the talks of executive orders in the Trump presidency so far, today, President Trump actually making history about history, ordering the classified federal government files on the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy Jr., his brother Robert Kennedy, and the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. be declassified, open to the public. And today as well, another message, not just to the United States, but to the world at large.
Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff. I terminated the ridiculous and incredibly wasteful Green New Deal. I call it the Green New Scam. So we have, hundreds of billions of dollars of deficits with the EU, and nobody's happy with it, and we're going to do something about it.
The president there speaking remotely to the elite Davos gathering in Switzerland, touting his domestic agenda while also making a new economic argument, repeating throughout the day that interest rates must come down. Kevin O'Leary joins us here in a moment on if that can happen and if it should. But we begin tonight over at the White House with our Kelly Meyer on this historic decision. Kelly, the decision and the announcement, the executive order from President Trump today, essentially was a campaign promise, and he took it up here in the first weeks of office.
Yeah, and this was something we were hearing some whispers about, Blake, and trying to work to get confirmed. But they told us really essentially as this presidency is starting out, when you want a question answered, you're going to hear it from the president himself. And that's what we heard inside the Oval Office today as he signed this. It says, quote, the order reads, the families of the American people deserve transparency and truth. It is in the national interest to finally release all records related to these assassinations without delay. Now, during his first term, Trump tried to do this, but after appeals from the CIA and the FBI, Trump blocked the release of hundreds of records due to potential harm to the United States. But now he is saying that the American public deserves to see this, that this is of public interest. Now, in terms of how soon you might see these files, in 15 days from now, in about 2 weeks, the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General, they're going to present a plan to the president for a full and complete release of records relating to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Then 45 days from today, they will review the records of RFK and MLK Jr. to present a plan to the president for a full and complete release of these records. The only thing, Blake, and you know this, there is no Attorney General or Director of National Intelligence just yet. Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi have yet to be confirmed, Blake.
All right, Kelly, so the news from the Oval today, what about the reaction from outside of it and from any of the families?
Well, and even there in that announcement, you heard President Trump say, give that pen to RFK Jr. Now, I checked his X page. We haven't heard from him. But remember, they also told his cabinet nominees not to be posting on social media. But we did hear from JFK's grandson. He posted this saying declassification is using JFK as a political prop when he's not here to punch back. There's nothing heroic about it, he says. Blake.
Our Kelly Meyer. Live tonight from the North Lawn of the White House. Kelly, thank you.
With oil prices going down, I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world. Interest rates should follow us.
Well, among the many things we know about President Trump, it's this. He wants interest rates low, rates, which could affect your mortgage, your auto loans, credit card loans, at the end of the day, really your bank account. They were never this high during the president's first administration, and today he told leaders virtually at the World Economic Forum that rates should drop immediately, and more than doubled down when talking to reporters in the Oval Office this afternoon.
I'd like to see them come down a lot. I think I know interest rates much better than they do. And I think I know it certainly much better than the one who's primarily in charge of making that decision. But no, I'm guided by them very much. But if I disagree, I will let it be known.
Joining me now here on the Hill, T.W. Origi, former communications aide to Mike Pompeo. Dan Cannon, former Battleground States Director for both the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you both. Thank you for being with me. The reality is the president cannot unilaterally lower interest rates, but he knows, T.W., that this was issue number 1 or 1A with immigration in the election, and he knows he can do stuff at the border. He wants to do stuff with the Fed, but he can't, and that's kind of the pickle here.
Yeah, the Fed traditionally operates independently of the president, but the president does have his bully pulpit. The president does nominate a director of the Fed. So he has a voice just like anybody else, and there's pressure that comes along with that. Obviously, he's had a disagreement with Jerome Powell for a long time about how he's dealt with inflation. That's going to continue. Interest rates are still really high. Me and many other people are trying to buy homes, and it's really tough. So he's right to say that in terms of that's what the pain people are feeling, and he has every right to try to advocate for them coming down.
As someone who just helped run the Biden-Harris campaigns, I guess you can kind of sympathize with that a little bit, because at the end of the day, if inflation's high, if rates are high, that's a problem for whoever is in the Oval Office.
Yeah, there are some winds that hit you when you're in command that you cannot control. And Joe Biden had to deal with a global pandemic and global inflation, supply chain issues that I think really hampered the politics for that president, right? But you have to manage, Blake, what you can manage from the Oval Office. From my perspective, the previous administration brought rates down from 9% to 2.9% in the most recent report. And they did so without
you're talking about.
Yes, sorry, inflation, not rates, and did so without inciting a recession at any point in time, which folks did not think was possible. Trump now wants to go hit rates and wants to lower inflation and wants to do all the things on costs and on loans on houses that TW mentioned to fulfill the campaign promise. The problem he has is everything he also wants to do on tariffs, on big tax cuts, is going to run directly counter to that. And I don't know that he actually has the stomach to do what he wants to do on those things and then still keep the prices in focus for voters.
I was at Davos in 2018, this forum. I was covering the president. I wasn't there personally. Okay. I was covering him at the time. And I remember from that the whole, oh my gosh, this wrecking ball is here. And now they're like, we're kind of on his side. They get it. They understand it. It's a much different tone.
Yeah, look, I think many Americans who voted for Donald Trump wanted a wrecking ball with the global order, with the big titans of industry that they think have ruined their lives here at home, the bankers. He called out the Bank of America CEO directly today about how his banking practices have hurt conservatives. There is a lot of pain going on in this country economically, and a lot of people blame it on these titans of industry that gather at Davos. They see that as the epitome of evil in our economy. And Donald Trump took it directly to him today. And he said, now we have a chief executive of the United States who's going to hold your feet to the fire, regardless of if you like it.
TW, Dan, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Joining me now is Kevin O'Leary, chairman of O'Leary Ventures. You know him from Shark Tank fame, friend of the show as well. Kevin, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill tonight. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
So Trump the president wants interest rates lowered. But you know this, inflation's still running between 2.5%, 3%, way higher still than the Fed wants it. And so if you bring interest rates down, doesn't that risk inflation? And isn't that sort of the game, or where Trump is stuck right now?
You know, every president wants interest rates down.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want interest rates down? I mean, it basically affects mortgage rates, which everybody has to deal with towards home ownership or even rent. It doesn't work that way. The Fed is independent, and it always has been. And there's a reason, because they're, at the end of the day, their mandate is employment and inflation. And you're right.
Yeah.
It's closer to 3 than it is to 2. And so there's work to be done. Now, Trump's right about one thing. If he can get energy prices down, that really reduces inflation, because that's an input cost to all 11 sectors of the economy.
Okay.
It doesn't happen overnight, but it's a pretty good narrative to jawbone about it, and that's what he's doing.
Got it.
And so that's really Burgum, Secretary of Energy, this whole thing going on with Alberta, getting the pipeline. Alberta ships in about 4.7 million barrels a day into the United States. They're talking of getting it up to close to 9 million with the pipeline. So that would cause, first complete energy independence, but also reduction in inflation.
I want to get to something.
You got to. We've all been listening to Trump for 12 years. You got to differentiate the noise from the signal, and the noise is bombastic, and I'm going to drop rates. The signal is I want to get inflation under control. I get it.
All right, so let me ask you about something else that happened at Davos, because Jamie Dimon said essentially that the president's tariff vision, his thinking is spot on, he basically said. Here's what he said. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
If it's a little inflationary, but it's good for national security, so be it. I mean, get over it. National security trumps a little bit more inflation.
So be it, get over it. It's easy, Kevin, for a billionaire, the biggest banker in the United States over in Switzerland in Davos to say, if there's a little inflation, get over it. Do you think, though, that resonates in the cities, in the suburbs, and in the small towns in this country? National security, but your prices are going to go up.
No, it's a difficult narrative. It's difficult to say that. But, if you listen to the speech Trump gave to Davos, he didn't even fly over there. He just said, look, I'll talk to them remotely, which he did. Again, the noise and the signal. So that really what he's doing with tariffs is different to every country. So to Mexico, he's building the wall, and he's saying, look, if you don't abide by this and you don't stop foreigners and foreign nationals and your own people from coming through illegally, I'm just going to rack up tariffs. Because the reasons tariffs work as a negotiating weapon is everybody wants access to the world's largest market, still the United States, not China, the United States. So what you're basically saying is, look, if you don't play ball with me, whatever it is, so Mexico, it's the wall. Canada, it's actually about spending the full 2% on NATO and putting a lot of money into defending the northern border, not the 49th parallel, the northern border against China and Russia, which, he wants them to do. And secondly, on the Canadian situation, is stop the flow of Chinese fentanyl across the Canadian border. So if they don't solve for that, if the Canadians don't solve for that, he squeezes their access to the American market, which obviously there's a huge interdependence, but he doesn't want to tariff oil out of Canada. The Germans, it's on cars. He's just saying, look, I'm going to squeeze everybody's head in access to the U.S. market if they don't comply with what I want.
I got about a minute left with you, Kevin. I want to ask you about Canada, because I saw over at the White House yesterday, Larry Ellison, Sam Altman, Masa Son, right, on this big AI announcement. And I saw from Mr. Wonderful himself an announcement this week on AI data centers in Canada. The Trump administration says the AI revolution, the data center revolution is happening here. You're choosing Canada to have it occur in. So who wins, the U.S. or Canada?
Well, there's not enough power anywhere. So that's the problem. I mean, this whole thing about data centers is you can't put a gigawatt, which is the minimum you need, in any state. There's no power left on the grid. So you have to actually build a turbine, gas powered, because nuclear power is 19 years away. So the only places you can do that right now, and I've got projects in all these locations, West Virginia, North Dakota, and Alberta, Canada. Why? Because they have massive amounts of stranded gas. I like the hype. I like all the, we're lighting up 3 Mile Island. I think that's hilarious. It's never going to happen. But really, there's only 3 places you can do this. And so Alberta is one of them, and it's a very friendly place. And there's obviously a relationship going on between Alberta, Doug Burgum, and Trump regarding the pipeline.
Right.
So Frank McCord and I announced that $70 billion project. We're going to do it up in Grand Prairie, Alberta, the largest data center on Earth at the lowest cost of energy. I think we're not going to have a hard time getting tenants at all.
Let me leave you with this. TikTok, you're trying to buy it. You just spoke of Frank McCord. There are reports out there that Mr. Beast, every kid in the country knows who Mr. Beast is, might be involved with trying to buy it. Is China talking to you? Does this deal get done? I got 30 seconds.
So 2 issues. I mean, I know about the Mr. Beast. Every guy and his dog wants to buy TikTok. There's all kinds of people talking. The only actual offer given to the Chinese ByteDance companies come from us. The next step is, does Xi want to sell it? He has the proverbial secret golden share. Only he can decide. And after that, you're going to have to solve for the tech. I believe that the McCourt-O'Leary group is the one that has a solution, because if you've looked at the Supreme Court order on page 5 and 6, you can't use a single line of the 5 billion lines of Chinese algorithm. You can't use one, or you're breaching federal law. So let's just let it play out. And I love Mr. Beast. I've also talked to his people. It's great. Look, it's all
He's
this
with
stuff
you, though,
is
or no?
When there's a void of information, you get speculation. And that's what we have right now.
Is he with you or no? Mr. Beast. Can you hear me, Kevin?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
We'll leave it there. Kevin O'Leary, appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time. Kevin O'Leary with O'Leary Ventures. Thank you, sir.
Take care. Thanks.
You got it. All right. Still to come. Winds fueling new fast-moving fires in Southern California. A live report from the front lines. I'll also speak with California's Attorney General on the other side of the break. Plus, could NASA find a new home in Florida? We're asking that question to one lawmaker there. And the Trump effect on immigration. We are live with the dramatic shift in border numbers. This is The Hill. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Live look right now, Southern California, where the National Weather Service has labeled today a dangerous fire day. More residents under evacuation orders as several new wildfires are burning across the Golden State. 51,000 acres now have burned since January 7th. Our Nancy Liu is live once again in Southern California, I believe in the town of Castaic, with the latest fire there. Nancy?
Yeah, Blake, we're on the edge of what's left of the Hughes fire, and containment is now up to 24%. Behind me, crews with the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, they're doing what they're calling the meat and potatoes of firefighting, and that is putting out the hot spots to make sure that a fire is out, and also relieve any danger from new fires starting up, because these Santa Ana wind gusts, they are still with us. We do feel them from time to time, gusts of up to like 50, 60 miles an hour. The surge in resources to Southern California, though, has made a difference in the firefighting, not only with the Hughes fire, but with other incidents that have been popping up. Rains are in the forecast for the weekend, and that is good news. That will help with the firefight. But the firefight is not over yet, with a red flag warning still up through tomorrow. Blake?
Nancy Liu in Castaic, California for us tonight. Nancy, thank you. So President Trump is set to visit the Golden State tomorrow to survey the damage caused by the fires there. The president has repeatedly criticized FEMA and is now outlining the argument that maybe more responsibility should be put on the states.
FEMA is a whole nother discussion because all it does is complicate everything. FEMA has not done their job for the last 4 years, and FEMA is going to be a whole big discussion very shortly, because I'd rather see the states take care of their own problems.
It also comes as Republicans continue to tell us here on the Hill that stipulations need to be attached to federal aid given to California, since the state, they say, did not properly prepare for disasters like this. Joining me now is the Attorney General of the state of California, Rob Bonta, live with us here on the Hill. Mr. Attorney General, thanks for being with us tonight.
My great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we keep talking to lawmakers in this town, and we hear it from the president as well about possible stipulations for federal aid. And I wonder, sir, if Republicans who run Washington end up going down that route, if there's anything that you as the Attorney General plan to do, any lawsuits that you plan to file, or is there nothing you could do about it?
I respectfully submit that would be a great mistake to put any conditions on aid to a state that's suffering from a natural disaster. It's a time-honored tradition for the president and the federal administration to provide aid when states are in need. The president ran for president to be the president of the United States of America, not just the red states of America. Doesn't matter what party preference the state has. When President Biden was the president, he provided disaster relief immediately to Florida, to Texas, when they faced devastating hurricanes, and that was very appropriate, the right thing to do. So I hope that tradition is continued forward. We'll, of course, as always, assess all of our different options based on the facts and the actions that are taken, but I think when the president comes, he'll see the devastation, the destruction, the damage, the human tragedy. He'll see that these are Americans in need of support from their government and from their president. I'm grateful that he's coming, and I'm hopeful that he'll provide the emergency relief without any conditions.
You are also in the news, sir. One of the attorneys general who sued over the president's birthright citizenship executive order. Here was the president today about the decision from a judge in Washington state calling that unconstitutional.
Mr. President, a U.S. judge temporarily blocks the birthright citizenship order. Do you have any reaction?
No, obviously we'll appeal it. They put it before a certain judge in Seattle, I guess, right? And there's no surprises with that judge.
Do you think this ends up at the Supreme Court?
I don't know. It shouldn't. This is a very clear case. It's blatantly unconstitutional what the president did on day one with his executive order on birthright citizenship. He trampled over our Constitution, attacked Americans, attacked children, did something very un-American, and overreached by a mile. So it really should be well settled. This judge today said in 4 decades, after being appointed by a Republican, President Reagan, he had never seen a case that was more clear. And he even said his mind was boggled that the lawyers for the Trump administration could come in and claim that the executive order was constitutional. So he said it was blatantly unconstitutional. It absolutely is. Maybe it gets to the Supreme Court, but I believe that in any court that this case goes to, where it is fair and objective and looks at the facts and reviews the law, we will prevail, and this order will be deemed unconstitutional because it is.
We got to leave it there. The Attorney General in the state of California, Rob Bonta, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, live pictures now, Pasadena, California. The governor, Gavin Newsome, set to speak any moment now ahead of President Trump's visit. What will he say? We'll take you there live when it happens. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Day 4 of the Trump presidency, and a bit of news involving John Ratcliffe, sworn in, as you can see there earlier today, as President Trump's CIA director. Pete Hegseth's nomination to potentially become the defense secretary moving forward as well. 2 Republican senators, though, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, say they will not support him, but that's not enough to potentially hold him back from that post. Well, as former President Harry Truman once said, quote, "The only thing new in the world is the history you do not know." We will soon, potentially within the next 2 months, know more about information about the assassinations of John F. Kennedy Jr., his brother Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., as President Trump today signed an executive order declassifying files on their assassinations. Joining me now is Congresswoman Kat Cammack. She is a Republican from the state of Florida. Congresswoman, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great to be with you.
So this was a campaign promise from the president to declassify these files. Already one of JFK's grandchildren is coming out and saying they're not in favor of this. Why do you think the president did it, and do you think the American people deserve to know?
Well, first things first, promises made, promises kept. This was something, as you just said, that the president had spoken about on the campaign trail. And quite frankly, for decades, there has really been no good reason as to why the remaining files have not been released. It's no secret that Americans across the country have a distrust. They certainly see a lack of accountability and transparency within government. And so I think the president really is taking a step trying to rectify that lack of transparency. And this has been one of those things that has just been lingering out there. And I would say let's take it one step further. Let's start releasing the Epstein list. That is something that I know every American is very interested in seeing.
You think he's going to do it?
You know, he has talked about it on the trail. I would not be surprised one bit if he released the Epstein files.
All right. I want to take a live look in Southern California, Congresswoman, because we've been following these fires there out in the Los Angeles area for weeks now. The governor there, Gavin Newsome, expected to speak any moment now. We were here for weeks talking about your area. You represent the Southwest Florida area by Cedar Key, the devastating hurricanes that ripped through your area. I'm a Floridian, you're a Floridian, we all know about it. And now there's a conversation here in Washington about adding strings, adding stipulations to potential federal aid for California. Do you believe as a Floridian a congresswoman who represents an area that is prone for hurricanes and prone for disasters, that now's the time to say, you know what? Let's put stipulations on aid?
You know, I think as someone who has dealt with, and just even recently, 3 major hurricanes in 13 months, I think we have the credibility to speak to this quite significantly. In the case of Florida, the state itself has invested over $1 billion into resiliency programs. We have seen everything from raising homes to reinforcing walls.
I hear you. Yeah, no, Congresswoman, I hear you, but I guess that's the point, right?
No, but you have to let me answer.
Go for it, and then I'll go for it.
But that's the point, is because California has not done that. I'm the wife of a firefighter, and the very first thing that my husband said to me when the fires started raging was, I guarantee you they have not been doing the annual testing on their hydrants, and I know for a fact that they do not do the maintenance burns required to keep the level low.
So I just heard you
They have not done what they need to do. They have to make a change.
So I just heard you talk about the $1 billion. I guess the point is, Congresswoman, and other items, it opens up down the line, theoretically, you could have Democrats in a Democratic-controlled Washington say, they only put in $1 billion. It should have been 10, 20, 55, whatever the number is. Now we got to add some stipulations to it and maybe hold back the delta there.
What we are saying, and this is, again, everything is up in the air at this point. These are conversations happening. The point is that California has done absolutely nothing to mitigate the risk and the fire risk in these areas. That is the point. Meanwhile, Florida has made a concerted effort to do resiliency efforts and mitigation. That's oranges and apples. So if you look at it from that standpoint, you're probably wondering, well, why didn't they do the testing? Why did Karen Bass, the mayor of L.A., cut $17 million from the fire budget? Why were they more focused on what box the firefighters checked rather than whether they were qualified? These are the things that a lot of people need answers to, and people have lost everything. They deserve to have a fire department that's focused on fighting fires and a group of people in their leadership that is focused on actually doing the work rather than making it a political statement.
Congresswoman, I got to leave it there. Thank you for being with us here on the Hill tonight. Appreciate it. So as the Congresswoman just mentioned, by the way, real quick, show California, because Karen Bass, the mayor of L.A., is at that press conference. Gavin Newsome, the governor of California, is at that press conference. We're expecting to hear from them momentarily. But first, a live look at the southern border tonight, where the first of President Trump's immigration measures are starting to play out, with members of the Department of Homeland Security saying there is a Trump effect. NewsNation has obtained the latest border encounter numbers now in the administration, and they show a sudden shift. The days leading up to President Trump's inauguration, Border Patrol agents saw some 4,000 immigrants arriving at the southern border daily in the last 3 full days of the Biden presidency. But the first day and a half of the Trump presidency, about half that, 815 encounters on Wednesday. Now, the president has made a host of changes at the border, including disabling a processing app and instituting the Remain in Mexico policy, while the Pentagon says roughly 1,500 active duty troops are headed to the border. Our Allie Bradley live with us tonight from Del Rio, Texas. Allie, what are you hearing down there as it relates to the shift?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about the energy shifting. That is a big piece of it. But it's quiet down here, Blake, because you just showed it. We are only seeing 815 people come and try to self-surrender to Border Patrol and be apprehended by Border Patrol, and that's across the entire southern border. There are 9 sectors down here, and we're averaging less than 1,000 a day. And we remember when Obama's DHS Secretary Jay Johnson said 1,000 a day is a crisis at the border. So under now President Trump 2.0, we're seeing under 1,000 once again. And agents tell me, they say, this is where we're supposed to be. I literally thought it was an error seeing these numbers as low as they are. And they said, this is a Trump effect. And then you factor in the CBP-1 appointments as well. That was the so-called legal pathway under the Biden administration. We saw around 5,000 of those port encounters under that administration during that same time frame, the 17th through the 19th. And then under Trump, gosh, those basically went away, essentially vanished. There are still a handful of those OFO encounters, Blake, because those are port encounters. They can have interactions in several ways outside of the app. But I also want to talk about these ICE numbers. So we're talking about these ICE fugitive task force operations that are happening across the nation where they're arresting criminal illegal immigrants. We got those numbers, too. So on the 20th and the 21st, there are around 470 apprehensions of these criminal illegal immigrants. And then yesterday, we just got these numbers in, Blake, 370 arrests. So more than 800 arrests of these criminal illegal immigrants under these ICE ops in just the last 3 days, Blake.
Our Allie Bradley live tonight at the border once again for us. Allie, thank you. Joining me now is the sheriff for Terrell County, Texas, Thaddeus Cleveland. He's about 100 miles or so north of where Allie was just reporting from in Del Rio. Mr. Sheriff, thanks for being with us tonight. So I see these numbers dropping, and we know that President Trump is going to do more, that this is just the beginning. What do you make of this sudden move, and how much more actually needs to be done?
Howdy, Blake. It's great to be on with you tonight, and some great reporting there by Allie. And she's actually been over to my county, boots on the ground, and as long as I've been sheriff, I retired about 3 years ago from the Border Patrol, and first met her when she was down there in Kinney County when we declared a disaster. But to your question, look, it is the Trump effect. And actually, when he was elected president, we knew it was going to start having an effect because people knew there was going to be a strong leader in the White House that let the rest of the world know that they weren't going to come to our country illegally. You'll still get some, in which we will see. But here in the last few days with the CH&V program going away, the CBP-1 app going away, and then giving Border Patrol, more importantly, the support they need. We didn't have the support as Border Patrol agents or along the border the last 4 years. President Trump
what comes next, Sheriff? What comes next? Because as I mentioned, it's just a few days, right? And you could say this is also sample size. It's statistics 101. It is sample size, right? There's a small sample. You could say the numbers could keep going down or keep going up. So I wonder what comes next, do you think?
No, we'll have the normal ebb and flow. We're going to get back to kind of that, what I call the normal battle rhythm. My county, we've seen a little bit of activity increase, but what we have in my county are people that want to abscond. They don't want to surrender. They don't self-surrender, not like what you see in Eagle Pass or El Paso. So we're going to get back to that normal ebb and flow while we're here on the border. But I'll tell you, with the troops that are coming, it's not the first time we've seen active duty troops on the border. President Trump did it the last time he was in office. It's nothing new to the border. They will be there to do jobs that allows Border Patrol agents to get out and patrol the border, and then they'll provide those support roles to the Border Patrol and bring in aircraft that is something that is also needed along the border.
Sheriff, I got to leave it there. Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland, squeezed on time tonight. As you might imagine, there is a ton of news going around. But we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, still to come here on the Hill. We, of course, by the way, Tom Homan tonight, Donald Trump's, the president's border czar, will be speaking to Chris Cuomo, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. All right, live look out of California. Expecting the governor to be speaking any moment now. When that happens, we will take you there live. The Hill and the full panel, other side of the break.
If we're going to give you disaster relief, there has to be some stipulations that we're not going to keep bailing you out, because what we're doing now is we're asking the taxpayers in Oklahoma to bail out California for their lack of management and putting the wrong people in leadership positions.
That the Oklahoma Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin last night here on the Hill saying there should be conditions on federal aid. Now, this is a common thought among Republicans due to the government's out-of-control spending as they see it in California. Nearly 3 hours after the senator shared his thoughts, the president questioned FEMA's capabilities as well.
And FEMA is going to be a whole big discussion very shortly, because I'd rather see the states take care of their own problems. If they get hit with a tornado or something, let Oklahoma fix it. You don't need, and then the federal government can help them out with the money. The FEMA is getting in the way of everything.
FEMA has been facing major criticism over the past few months for its response to Hurricane Helene and what happened in the Carolinas and the California wildfires as well. President Trump will make his first official visit as president to Asheville, North Carolina tomorrow. That area experienced extreme flooding caused by Hurricane Helene last year. And after that, he will then travel to California as wildfires continue to burn across that state. A live look right now in California as the California Governor Gavin Newsome expected to take to the microphone along with the LA Mayor Karen Bass at any moment now. Full panel here with me now. Dan Cannon is the former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. T.W. Origi, former communications aide for Senator Lindsey Graham. Samantha Davis, former official in the first Trump administration. And Brad Howard, Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. Appreciate it. You know a thing or two about disaster response, and now the conversation, the argument is starting to shift a bit.
Yeah, I think there's a couple realities that are important to acknowledge that, in the example he used about a tornado hitting Oklahoma, sure, that's fine, but you have a massive hurricane that takes out an entire state's infrastructure. They can't rebuild themselves. They don't have the budget or the resources. States can't run deficits. And so the federal government, the way it works is when Arkansas is hurting, we step in as Americans. When Texas is hurting, when Montana is hurting, we step in and take care of our own. I think the question is, the big criticism that FEMA often gets is almost like an impossible expectations of the impossible, where you've got a massive fire situation that hurricane force winds at 100 miles an hour spreading. No amount of water is going to stop that. It's just, it's a nature of the condition we're in. We're in some of these areas that are tough climates. We've got to get used to this and build it. But I do think the one thing that will make this worse is inserting politics into getting relief to people. This money isn't going to Newsome. It's going to people. We learned in Katrina that is a recipe for disaster.
Your party often takes the position of kick it back to the states, put the states in control. Is this the place to do it?
I think it's appropriate to say that states need to have a little bit more accountability with respect to how they prepare for these disasters and how they respond to them. And so I think, look, Brad makes some fair points, and I think there's certainly a really important role for FEMA. I think the states need to, if states have bad policies and they aren't, filling their fire hydrants or being prepared infrastructure-wise, I think that there needs to be accountability for funds. The other thing I would say is President Trump is right that FEMA itself also has a need for reform. There have been investigations that have shown, even under the Biden administration, Biden's own IG showing that they raided the disaster fund and spent it on things that were outside FEMA's core mission. So I think there's questions and a need for reform there.
We have had lawmakers on both sides of the aisle come on the show over the last couple of weeks, North Carolina and California, questioning FEMA going forward. But what about this argument? Because as Brad says, a hurricane, Cat 5, Cat 4 comes through, you're going to need the federal government.
Yeah, and by the way, Donald Trump said he would help out with funding and certain resources if needed. I think when we talk about stipulations, it is that if we give money to a state for fire mitigation or something else, you can't then couple it with bad policies and then just have you go to the well over and over. We talk about fire mitigation. They've been doing controlled burns in California since the Native Americans.
But that's
a stipulation.
This was how I challenged the Congresswoman from Florida. Florida, we've done $1 billion. You could have Democrats say it should have been $5 billion, so we're going to withhold $4 billion. Why didn't you spend $5 billion? And then that game gets played.
Sure, but I think get back to the basics of this. There needs to be an acknowledgement that if you get any funding, you need to take concrete, real steps to change it, whether it's desalination plants, water flow issues, fire prevention, and forest maintenance. Those are important stipulations.
Just by the way, money that's gone to the states: Florida, $2.5 billion, Louisiana, $2.4 billion, Texas, over $2 billion. That's from 2015 to 2024.
This is politics, Blake. Brad's right. We would not be having this conversation if it was about Florida. We just simply would not. He'd be down there getting the 8 out as fast as he could. That's what he would be doing. It's about Gavin Newsom and California and making a political point. And on the infrastructure pieces and making sure states and communities have what they need, this is the exact same time, by executive order, he halted the bipartisan infrastructure bill funding. Only a quarter of the projects are out there. That kind of funding on our crumbling infrastructure is what gives us the resilience to defend communities against earthquakes, against floods, creating the conditions to be more resilient against these natural disasters.
I would just note, as Gavin Newsom is there live, that for the hurricanes, when there was a Democratic president and a Republican House, it took time to get money there to the states in need. Gavin Newsom live in California right now.
Supporting this bill. I want to thank the Speaker and the Pro Tem for their fierce sense of urgency to move this forward, to the budget chairs that are here. I want to thank them. I want to thank everybody that cleared the deck, didn't play politics with this, that recognized that people are in need. And as the pastor reminded me and others the other day when we had a faith meeting, people feel helpless, but not everybody feels hopeless. And I think this is about distilling a sense of hopefulness. The pro tem didn't tell you, a little bit, I'll fill in a little bit more about the history of his district and the Tubbs fire and the impact time. We thought 2017, we'd never see a fire like that again until 2018. And 85 people lost their lives in the Camp Fire, 18,000 structures. It's remarkable. I was reminded by the pro tem and others, 80+% of Coffee Park and community impacted by the Tubbs fires are back. Kids are back in school. Just 2 weeks ago, one of the largest insurers in California announced they were reinsuring homes in Paradise, California, because the community is moving back in. So I say that, again, to distill a sense of hopefulness about the moment we're in and the stress and anxiety so many people are feeling. And so that's the why. That's why we're here.
The California Governor Gavin Newsom speaking in Pasadena, California. It'll be quite the scene tomorrow as President Trump, who will begin his day in North Carolina, will then fly to California. Will he meet with the governor? What that conversation may or may not be like, what it could look like, and what comes of it. You're watching The Hill here on News Nation. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, with me on the other side of the break. Welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. Moments ago, we were just listening to the California Governor Gavin Newsom in Pasadena, California. That's basically the site of the Altadena fire there. President Trump tomorrow is going to make his first domestic trip of his second term. First, he goes to Asheville, North Carolina in the morning, then will fly out west to California, the site of two very different states on different coasts with different tragedies. Still in many ways, in different ways, ongoing in both places. And we will see what happens tomorrow. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, when the president is there in California, and what, if anything at all, the reaction is like with Gavin Newsom.
Right, and we've seen this before with a president of an opposite party during a disaster, and it's often been up to the governor, right? The president is here. You show up when the president comes to town. And whether Gavin Newsom can swallow his pride for a little while in the name of aid to his state will be interesting to see.
They normally act like adults, and that's not for these two. But generally speaking, when a president goes in, the governor's there, it's an opposite party. The interesting thing here, or one of the interesting things, is the back and forth, as you mentioned, that they've had recently. You have Senator Ricketts,
Senator Pete Ricketts
Ambassador
coming up.
Huckabee.
Ambassador
tonight.
Huckabee, big show on Donald Trump's foreign policy for Mike Huckabee and for Pete Ricketts.